Constantine is just a wonderful and a very different, unique kind of movie about a very different, very unique character.
This is Constantine. John Constantine.
I take no sides, you know, in the battle of good and evil.
Action!
It's just a different type of hero. It's a different type of villain. And it's a different type of human. And it's a different type of character. And it's a different type of movie. It all fits.
It's been good fun.
Is he inside?
What's always been really important to me was just the heart of this character and who he is and what makes him who he is.
We tried to sort of distill out the spirit of the source material. And enough of us have been through adaptations that have gone not the way we wanted them to be as careful as possible.
I was not familiar with the comic book at all until I started doing my research to put my presentation together. So I started reading some of the graphic novels, and it was there that I really sort of learned who Constantine was and what the heart of his character was.
John Constantine, I believe, is one of the greatest comic characters ever created.
Constantine was a bad boy, and people like bad boys.
Constantine was created by Alan Moore, whom many people consider to be the greatest writer in the comic book field.
The creation of Constantine was one of those kind of fluke things, as I think many great creations wind up being. He started as a real cameo appearance in Swamp Thing 37. The story was called Growth Patterns, and it's featured in the Curse graphic novel. Constantine had a real appeal when we first introduced him in the book, but it wasn't an overwhelming, thousands of letters a day, give this guy his own series. We on our own recognized that there was something special about him, and we launched his own book. The first issue of Hellblazer came out in 1987.
When I took over writing John Constantine and developing, I suppose my main concern was to do the character's potential justice.
What Jamie Delano did with the series when he first started writing the monthly book was to really create a past for him, give him a family. Jamie really played into the political atmosphere of the Thatcher-Reagan era of the 80s.
It was basically a parody of the rampant capitalism that was stepping on the gas, and it was a lot of fun to write, and great characterizing BMW driving yuppies as corrupt, greedy demons from hell, and allowing Constantine to sort of beat them at their own game by manipulating the hellish stock markets. When I first began developing John Constantine, the imprint that later became known as Vertigo did not exist.
DC Comics began to experiment with some books that would bring back the old horror thriller genre and do it being less fettered by the restrictions found in a typical DC comic book. Ultimately, this turned into the Vertigo line of comics, which is a mature line of comics.
Vertigo was developed on the back of Hellblazer and numerous other books such as Animal Man and The Sandman.
This was a chance for Constantine to really launch a whole new line for DC, and I think he did so incredibly well.
His cynicism, balanced with his knowledge of otherworldly things, really makes him the essence of Vertigo.
John Constantine is in your face. He will tell you what's on his mind. He really doesn't care what you say or what you think. He's the James Dean of the occult world.
He was about the most reluctant hero I'd ever come across.
instead of like doing it for very noble reasons, he was actually doing it to bedevil the devil. He wanted to, just take on demons for the thrill of it.
He's a manipulator. He's a con man. He'll use magic. He'll call up an old friend who dabbles in the dark arts. But he's more about manipulating people than using magic. And I think that's the key of what keeps this character so fresh, is that it's a head game all the time.
He's a smartass. In many ways, I think he's a lot of what his readers would like to be. I wish I had his ability to slip through the cracks of whatever the problems are, deal with the weird stuff in life, and do it all with a smirk.
We were very excited that Constantine was going to get his own film because he's a complex character, but his role is clear and direct. And I think that's one of the elements why he was able to make the leap to the big screen.
Hellblazer was something I'd always wanted to do something with. And, when I got to the point where I'd sold a few scripts, and people would say to you, what do you want to do next? It was, the top of my list.
Actually, the project came to me as a comic. Kevin Broadbent brought it to me. What I saw was an opportunity to do a very classic horror film like The Exorcist. It's interesting because at the time I set it up, I had not gotten X-Men going yet, so it was before the comic book craze. But it was just such a good story.
I had never done comic books, but I hooked into the character and I brought in a pitch about the guy. And that's when they, I think, started saying, well, maybe this is the guy to rewrite it. I was handed, I think, Dangerous Habits and Original Sins. And when I started reading through those, that introduced me to the character, and especially Dangerous Habits. It was such a different kind of story about a guy really basically that was dying of his own habit. And yet he had faced so many dangerous things in his life, and here what was killing him was a cigarette. Movies nowadays, they're about saving the world, this kind of story, or about saving a city from a bad guy. And I thought if you had a character like John, really that's the concentration you could put on, is whether or not he's going to live through this cancer that he's got. Is he going to beat it? Not whether he saves the world. Just him saving his own butt was interesting enough for me.
A friend of mine who was an executive at Warner Brothers sent me a copy of the script to rewrite. And I read it, and I thought it was amazing, and that I really didn't want to rewrite it because I thought the voice was really very good. It's hard to do minimalist noir. I'm not even sure it's a genre. But this had this very take-it-for-granted tone. I love the fact that the movie never bothered to try to explain itself. Since Constantine takes the world for granted, so does the film.
There's elements from several of the comic book stories. That was one of the hardest things, was to figure out what to take from the comics in terms of like plot, and then what to, disregard because it wouldn't work in a film. There's elements from the very start with Chaz the taxi driver, Papa Midnight, and Ellie, a demon.
Midnight, I think, is the closest to the comic, actually. I think Midnight was always an ally, adversary, that kind of guy that you don't quite trust, but yet at the end of the day, if you had to go into war with somebody, you'd go get him. The other character is Chaz. I mean, his sidekick kind of, actually he's more like an ally in the comic books. He's a guy that's about the same age. They've gone through a lot of the same stuff together. It was an interesting relationship. It was probably really the most adult relationship that John had in the comic. Now in the movie, it's taken a different stand, and Chaz becomes more of a sidekick. Late in the game, we finally, at least I did, thought we need some sort of backstory to say, where did this guy come from? So I said, if a guy saw demons all the time, what was he like as a kid? I'm kind of surprised, though, that the main character has stayed the way he is all the way through. I mean, every single director, everybody came on, wanted that guy to stay who he was.
The idea was to go with a director with a visual sense, to sort of make sure the Constantine stayed young and hip. So therefore, we were looking to a younger, newer director. We met with many video and commercial directors, but Francis stood out, and he was smart in that we understand if from their work that they can cover the visual sense of it. But what everybody worries about is, can they tell a story and can they draw a performance? And that's what he focused on right away.
Keanu was actually the last person for me to meet with. He was kind of the last rung in everybody that I had to go through to get the job. And he had been off in Australia working on the Matrix films. And I believe it was the day he arrived home or the day after he arrived home from Australia, having been gone for 18 months. I had him come down to my office and I filled the conference room with my presentation that I had built up over these 5 months. 30 poster boards filled with stuff. I mean, it really sort of laid it out. You could really kind of see what the movie was going to feel like, and I think he liked what he saw. And, you know, we honestly really saw eye to eye about the character and about the story.
In the history and tradition of going from one form to any form, has always kind of brought about disappointments for people in terms of how they, relate to the source material and to its interpretation. But I think that the heart and soul of it, we've really tried hard to keep intact.
When we found out that Constantine was not going to be British, of course, being the comic book company, we were surprised and wondering why that approach was being taken. But Keanu Reeves turned out a wonderful performance.
I think the film's an extraordinarily good translation. Francis Lawrence and the team really went rather than to the iconography or the outer dressing of what the character is, to the essence of the attitude.
It's a guy who just has problems in general with the rules in the world, and he has problems in general with the idea of fate, that there are rules he has to live by, good and bad. And that's what I've really fought for, and I even fought to put more of that back in there and more of that attitude back in there, that Constantine attitude.
There's very little about the character of John Constantine in the graphic novel and the comics that is anything like Keanu. They're very different physical types, different nations of origin, but we tried to sort of distill out the spirit of the source material rather than the actual sort of physical representation.
I didn't think bleaching Keanu's hair blonde was going to be right. We tried an olive-colored trench coat. All throughout pre-production, I thought he was going to wear an olive-colored trench coat. And when we first tested it, it didn't look good. So we went with a black one because that's what looked best and looked right for Keanu.
Our process with Keanu and Keanu's process with this...
Completely, totally committed to what he does, to his work. Sometimes I'll go, Keanu, and he'll go, yeah, and he's not there. And he's John. He's like deep in the character.
There's only so many women who sort of feel like if you place them in this world could be psychic. Rachel, she's also physical enough that I bought that she could be a detective. And so it was that sort of combination that really drew me to her.
But you just don't know when you meet a director how they're going to be with actors, or how they're going to be in a set, or how they're going to be under the pressure of a 6-month shoot or a huge studio movie. And he has never, ever once, for 1 second, let me down, ever.
You're the one soul I would come up here to collect myself.
We toiled and toiled over Satan just because, you've seen so many versions. You've seen the beast, you've seen the seductive woman, you've seen the child, you've seen the well-dressed man, and it was, okay, who's our Satan gonna be? I just somehow saw him like Fagin, this nasty, gross, kind of funny, just, the nastiest of the nasty. And I thought Peter would be perfect for that. Satan is just this insouciant son of a bitch who never really needs to get angry. He's Satan. It's like, he doesn't give a shit.
Your ego is astounding.
Gabriel.
Tilda Swinton is the person that I wanted for the role of Gabriel since the second I started thinking about casting of this movie. I never thought in a million years she would ever do it. I really didn't.
3, 2, 1, action!
His idea was a sort of unisex, asexual. He wanted Gabriel to be androgynous.
It was this sort of slight manipulation to try and get her in. We thought, okay, well, let's make sure we have some more mainstream names in this movie, other than Keanu, before we ask for Tilda Swinton, who's more of an independent film actress. And we sort of plotted and planned and plotted and planned. It was time to go in, and, the head of the studio just said, oh, her, she's great, sure. And it was no fight, no problem whatsoever.
I was sitting watching the first rough cut as they began to put the footage together, and you get to that.
Nothing has seemed to stop him yet, so I think he has many, many years left.
thing about when making a movie that I found is that you go through such severe ups and downs. I like it, I like it, I like it. It's okay. Oh, it was all right. And that was actually one of the biggest sort of eye-openers for me, because music videos go by so quickly, you know, and they're on the air and off the air and sort of forgotten. And it's fine and it's fun and you can learn and you can tell little stories, but you're also always sort of ruled by the song, by the tempo, the pace, the tone, the energy of that song. And, you know, for me, the feature film was free.
Yeah. I like that.
You can make a scene any way you want. To me, it's complete freedom. We're going to follow you up. We're going to run through the whole action. To the point where you first pull back. I guess I would say that, you know, the only sort of physical difference is just the endurance needed for a feature. You might shoot a video for 5 to 7 days, tops. With this, you know, on a 100-day shoot, you may be on a scene for the first 3-4 days or something, and then at the end of that you go, okay, wow, well that scene's done, but now I've got to live with it for the next 2 years of my life.
Let's do one that's actually fairly wide, like a 17.5 maybe.
In the beginning, I was very, very happy. I knew that I was going to be watched pretty intensely the first couple of weeks. It's a big movie. I'm a first-time director. People didn't know what it was going to be like.
Rehearsal!
We had rehearsed for 3 weeks beforehand, and what we started shooting was the exorcism scene, so we had it planned out perfectly. Had the camera set up. It was lit. On the call sheet, it said we were going to be shooting an hour after call. We were shooting about 10 minutes after call. People hadn't even shown up. So the execs start showing up, producer starts showing up. We're on the 3rd and 4th shot of the day. They couldn't believe it.
Francis, you still want him to creep forward?
So we were just super, super prepared to get through that kind of stuff. You know, but there was always a little nervousness at the beginning of every new scene, I think, because there's always, it's kind of an unknown. I know what I want to do, but I also know when I walk on that set and I have 5 actors around me, they're all going to have new ideas.
He can open and shut it and go through the gate.
You always get caught off guard, I think, you know, and it's probably because you're caught off guard that you find certain scenes tough that you didn't expect to be tough and certain scenes easy that you expected to be tough. I would say one of the tougher scenes in the movie for me, and I think also for Keanu, is what we call Molly's Burgers, which is really boiled down to 2 people sitting at a counter talking. She's now starting to accept that the world isn't necessarily the way she thought it was, and he's now telling her the way it works. But it was 6 to 8 pages of some pretty thick dialogue in terms of exposition and learning of the rules of the world and the way things work.
When I was a kid, I saw things humans aren't supposed to see.
And for a movie that has hell and CG creatures and sprinklers going off and shooting and stunts and car wrecks and all this stuff, I mean, you would think 2 people sitting in a counter having a conversation would be an easy night of shooting. And it ended up being one of the more difficult things, and it was just because it's tough when when you're dealing with that much information.
Like that? No, forward. Yes, that's it.
We shot all of Tilda's stuff at the end of our schedule, so she and Peter worked at pretty much the same time. And they really weren't around for the first 3/4 of the film. And so it was really great to have the 2 of them come in and fresh and excited, and we're all kind of tired of each other and grizzled and, you know, battle weary and all this. And they came in and just had a blast.
I think it's really important that I keep having these classical shapes, like these sort of statues, so that it's not too domestic.
And I still smile every time I watch the scene of the two of them together, because it was so much fun to shoot that. They were just so enthusiastic.
I will smite thee in his honor.
I think also, you know, in the same category, once filming had stopped, was seeing how much you can truly change a movie through editing.
Hey, partway through that line, cut to his POV.
In videos and commercials, you're dealing with such a small project that, you know, editing is somehow more about design than it is about real structure. Because, you know, there's only so many things you can do, and everything's so dictated by the song or the 30 seconds that the editing choices you make don't have quite the same impact as it is on a movie. You know, the idea of like what it does to the movie when you pull one scene out or add this scene back in. You know, what it does as like a ripple effect through the whole thing. That was just a fantastic learning experience for me.
God, thank you. Great job.
The original script, you know, the opening of the movie did take place in Turkey. You know, it's going to be this big sort of epic shot of coming into Istanbul over the water and ending up on this, you know, at this prison and going inside and finding this guy who's sort of like digging his way out of the cell and comes across the relic and sort of breaks out of this prison, and he's being chased by guards who are shooting him, but the bullets aren't affecting, and then he gets hit by the car and runs off. And that was one of the things that got hit by budget, because if we had done the Turkey thing, we would have had a second unit shooting in Turkey, and we would have had, you know, a couple of stage days for interiors and a couple of location days for the exterior. And so it was all moved to Mexico. We shot this opening in about a day and a half, and it ended up being a pretty challenging day. We shot out in the desert, this old Kaiser steel mine, and it's these old sort of ruins, and we added these crosses to these structures, so it looked like these old sort of burnt out churches.
It's got to be a popcorn scare, which means we can't telegraph the car coming into frame. It's got to be like all on the guy, and all of a sudden the car hits him.
That scene took some planning. We had this sort of complex system of both visual and practical effects, you know, trying to work together seamlessly on that day.
You're basically going to walk where that little wedge is dug in the ground and walk straight out. Right? And then what we do is we do another version of that shot with the car hitting that steel post, and then all that stuff gets erased.
They drilled this giant hole into the ground and put this big steel pipe exactly where the body would be when it got hit.
When the guy runs, he'll run right through this mark, right through the center.
Yeah. And then he had this car that had the engine block taken out, and it had all been weakened.
We're anchoring this down so when it hits in here, everything will buckle instead of flying all over the place. We don't want stuff to fly all over. We want to make it look like the guy, it implodes into him.
And then he had this track system laid out with these hydraulic pumps.
The air ram will be charged with two 2-inch valves at 1,600 psi. The amount of force is 43,000 pounds of force.
And then these air jams would send this car flying into the post.
The wreck itself is so violent that we really can't put anybody in it.
But of course, Jose can handle it. He's a certified stunt articulating dummy.
One last time, is there anybody who is not ready?
Rolling. Speed. Set. 3, 2, 1, go!
Good job, man.
Good job. The car crashed so violently that Jose the dummy could only be extracted using the jaws of life.
We have one convertible.
We then had another rig that we brought in because I wanted the back end to actually go up, that this thing stopped so quickly and hit so hard that the back end of the car would rise up in the air and then drop down. And we actually ran into some problems because the back end wasn't going up quickly like it should. You know, if you hit somebody at 60 miles an hour, it kind of eked up there, and then it could drop down just great.
Working on it. Go. Another test. 3, 2, 1, go.
So we ended up having to just shoot the dropping down and end up reversing the film for the lift up.
Action!
Okay. No dust on this one, because I have to reverse it.
Been laying new dust in, so it looked like the force was still going forwards. I always have this edit system, you know, basically following me around during, you know, with the video playback. So I can, as I shoot, start to cut sequences just enough to see whether or not things will work.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I knew by the end of the day that I had the sequence.
They have Bibles in hell.
The Bible from Hell is a book that Beeman uses to find out who Mammon is
and what he's trying to do with the Spear of Destiny. We had an illustrator do up some pictures for us. I went to great lengths to actually write the copy for the script and then have it translated into Latin. The cover's rather obscured at this point, but it's actually wrapped up in plastic in the movie, and it's all covered in like a black slime.
Holy Shotgun's pretty good, which I end up wreaking some havoc with, which is fun.
This prop went through a lot of changes in the film.
We had first thought that it was maybe Constantine who put it together from some of Beeman's old notes, kind of like Leonardo da Vinci, only in your garage. And he would tape a flashlight to an old gun and can of butane, and it would look really funky but be an effective magical tool.
It was sort of a mess. The intentions, I think, were right going in, but the gun just did not look good. So we then just started to build the different kinds of relics that this gun came from. And then we started to try and unify them so that when they locked together, you could say they were actually originally designed to be pulled apart and put together to form this gun.
In the final film, you don't really see the assembly of it, but we did one scene where the prop is assembled. So actually all these are different components of holy relics in Beeman's lair.
No, you're not supposed to be up here.
This would snap together, like that. Pull the cross out.
So we did a test with the other microwave system.
That snaps in. Thank you, Dragon's Breath. Fuck.
Hello. 27. 19.
There you have it. The Holy Shotgun.
Parts getting clean.
It was a hard prop to build because it's about, 8 props in one. We had to keep the weight down so it was easy to use. It was a functioning prop. The light on it had to light. It had to fire. There's a lot of elements to it that were mechanical, which always makes it a lot more challenging. Because so many of these props were from different places and different eras, we tried to get some things to look very different. I think there's an overall look to the film that's reflected in the props.
There's some interesting concepts that Francis wanted to do in this physiotherapy room where there were one continuous action pieces, killing 10 or 12 demons in one continuous shot, which was fun. Because it was like a lot of times you break these fights up into different pieces and master and several intermittent cuts, and he wanted to do these in their entirety. So that became challenging, along with the set height and restrictions of the low ceilings and whatnot. We had to really plan things out in advance and be ready to put the holes in the proper positions and have it all flow together as one.
Rehearsal.
Rehearsing.
And set. 3, 2, 1, go.
Our hero comes through the door, he sees all these demons, he has 2 lines of dialogue, and they want him to walk from A to B through the room, and he takes everybody out. It's pretty much how it's described. And it goes from one person to the next, a 25-foot move overhead to the gun going to a click on a principal's head.
Cut.
And then talking with Francis how he wanted to go about it in one piece, and he wanted to make it a stylized piece. And then we marked it off on the floor of the stage, and we walked it. And what we thought was an even flow and a nice cadence without breaking it up, making it one continuous move. Again, keeping in mind that we wanted to keep it consistent and moving and not be start and stopping. So we started just working this cadence out and what was a cool move with the weapon. Boom, boom, boom. He turns this way, he shoots this way, he ducks this way, he hits this way, all the way through. And then we started bringing in other guys that were working with us to be those individual parts. And then we just start piecing it together, and that's how the choreography was developed. And little by little, you just kind of tweak it and move it around till you get what you like. And that's how it came to be.
Early on in my approach to this movie, there was just certain areas that stuck out to me as problematic when sort of starting to come up with concepts for them, and one of them was hell. In the original script, hell is a black void, and it was like the ground was like an oil slick, and there were some bones lying around. I thought, that's all been kind of done before. What would make it more relatable? And I thought, because I'm approaching everything in a sort of a realistic way, it'd be really interesting to give a real geography to hell.
Francis had done a lot of visual homework to really set up what he wanted. He'd show me pictures, he had a lot of references. He wanted hell to be a freeway from the get-go.
There's also a little bit of a joke of, the LA freeway system being hell.
I had an idea early on about what I thought hell should look like, and in one of my first meetings with Francis and Naomi Shohan, I suggested that hell look like that moment when the heat wave from the nuclear blast hits everything just before the shock wave, which blows it all apart. And when the heat wave hits, things stream off violently, they melt, they catch fire, they start to blow apart, but they aren't really disintegrating until the shock wave hits. And I said, maybe hell is that moment during a nuclear blast, but it lasts forever.
And I thought that was just great. I mean, that just kind of finished it all off. So you just have this insane, super directional wind.
We had videos of nuclear tests, the ones that they did in White Sands. We also had a videotape from a place that researches decomposition of bodies. So we looked at decay and destruction.
Naomi started working on design sketches for what hell might look like, and in the end, we came up with the hell that you're going to see in the movie.
By the time that we started working with Mike and Francis, a lot of the conceptual work had been done for the Hell Freeway. They'd done storyboards and illustrations and even some animatic work. The developmental work that we were doing was more in taking these illustrations, like the key art that we've seen, into the three-dimensional world.
To create the hell environment, we used virtually every trick in the book.
They move up and down.
The Hell Freeway set was actually pretty cool. The production designer and art department did a fantastic job of filling an entire stage with a recreation of a freeway that had been destroyed as if in an earthquake, and also a lot of cars that are sort of in this process of erosion.
Despite the size of this set, this is a very small part of the environment. We are creating the entire city of Los Angeles as if it were in hell. In this film, hell is essentially a parallel universe, and we're trying to stay true to Los Angeles.
So we would start with these photographic pictures of Keanu walking down a freeway with a lot of wind on him, and we started building all that in the computer.
Everything you see that's here, all the cars, whatever you're looking at, will actually be replaced by CG objects. Because as the wind blows, all of this automaton. We wanted the demons in hell to not just be frightening, we wanted them to appear to have a lot of weakness. We wanted them to seem almost like they weren't smart enough to know anything except they had to devour humans who came to hell. And they were sort of pathetic about the way they went about it. They had to do it in groups, and they were kind of sad looking.
So they all have really bad sort of curvature of the spine, and they're all really skinny with these really bloated bellies.
With the help of the guys at Stan Winston's studio, we set about designing the creatures for the movie. And Stan's guys built a puppet of one of these creatures, which was used in a couple of the shots.
They did a great job. The detail that they brought in was just amazing.
Every other shot in hell or anywhere else where these demons appear, the demons are computer graphic.
With the scavengers, what we needed to happen was for it to start off relatively slowly, like the creatures are stalking Keanu at the very beginning, and then for it to progress into this crescendo at the end where it's this mad chaos. Because they don't have eyes, we had to use other senses, like their sense of smell and also their sense of touch. So we have them, they're sniffing the air. That also helped us develop the personality of these creatures.
Close your eyes.
Why?
We created another species of demon called Cephalovites. Every single scene of a cephalite in the movie is computer generated. They actually only appear in one particular attack sequence in the film, and It was great fun creating the sequence. The inspiration for these characters came from a bar I went into in Yugoslavia, and we were given drinks in stemware with the stems broken off. So you had to finish your drink and you couldn't set it down, which was a particular kind of hell of its own. And so we had these creatures, and I said, well, if they had no legs, then they would just be destined, determined they always have to stay in the air. These poor guys could never land.
The design of the Sepulvite's wings is very much like a bat's. So we did do a lot of research into how bats fly, their motion.
The general drive of the attack is that they never quite get in there. They're completely disintegrated. So we had a lot of discussions because there's been disintegrations done in movies before, and we really wanted to make sure that this was new and interesting. Imagining a real creature being completely dissolved away, there's a lot of stuff involved there. And without getting disgusting, you want to have that kind of stuff show up. You want to see that density and mass. We talked about the wing panels and how they would dissolve differently because they're these very thin, leathery kinds of things, as opposed to the wing bones and wing structures, and then compare that to the bodies. And you can do kind of interesting things with having dust blow through those areas and how they dissolve, and trying to make it fun and interesting.
Hey buddy, got a light?
Vermin Man creature was described in the script, the first script I ever read. There was a fight between Keanu and this demon who resolved himself by actually gathering together snakes and rats and bugs of all sorts and forming himself into a human-like creature. And the sequence just struck my imagination, and everybody who read the script said, oh, we want to do Vermin Man, we want to do Vermin Man.
Seeing the artwork, the drawings were absolutely gorgeous and really set a very high bar for us to meet.
We're all blown away. It was amazing. It's like, dude. And immediately we're like, cool, can't wait to get going on this.
But oddly enough, there was a really big struggle to keep Vermin Man in the movie.
It was one of these sequences that I was just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting for. It seemed to be the one, when we were having all of our budget issues in prep, it seemed to be the one that, they always wanted to push to the end of the schedule in case I ran over.
Vermin Man is not inexpensive. And because it was a fight scene. Fight scenes can be cut out of movies, and movies can be finished without fight scenes, and generally the audience would never know, and the studio knew that. So at the outset, Vermin Man was on the chopping block.
But it was kind of like, okay, well, why don't you guys test it and see where you get to, and we'll kind of reevaluate.
Francis wasn't sure exactly how well this guy was going to come together because it was a pretty out there concept, and would he look real enough, and didn't want him to be very cartoony.
So we started doing our testing and putting the systems together and getting a look for him in 3D.
The technical challenges were pretty clear. Vermin Man is made out of maybe 20 different kinds of bugs, rats, snakes, spiders, crabs. There's a bird in there.
We had these great conceptual layouts that characterized the guy as a sort of force or a will holding together these bugs. He wasn't that defined. He might, come apart a little.
Each animal has to have its own characteristics, in addition to contributing to the characteristics of one larger creature. So part of the problem is, how do you convey the anger, the rage, and the meanness of the Vermin Man character, but still make something as harmless appearing as a beetle, still do beetle-like things?
So we had to find that balance, and especially with the facial animation, trying to get the expressions, but given enough looseness so that it feels like it's a swarm of bugs that are emoting. You can capture in a drawing that one moment in time where all the bugs are in just the right place to form the face so that it looks like the Vermin Man from the artwork. But all of these things are moving to different places.
With computer graphic characters, you can have
a cockroach crawl right through a snake. Well, that would not be real. The cockroach has to crawl over the snake while the snake is moving and keep his footing and cast shadows and highlights and have all the right kind of lighting. At the same time, keeping conformation as a human being and trying to keep a face that can actually do a performance.
We spent almost a full year pulling that together from the initial conceptual stages of getting the individual creatures to actually getting them now to all perform in concert.
And it was difficult. There was a lot of code to be written. He had to wear a coat, and so I said, well, we should make the coat out of a swarm of bugs. How about termites? And that just came because I had just found a swarm of termites at my home, which was always an exciting inspiration. We had to have a sort of monolithic feel to the coat. It couldn't feel like the rest of him and be as chaotic and broken up, because he did have to be able to walk down the street and sort of hide his appearance as if he were a homeless person.
A cloth simulation would do what physically would happen. You know, you could simulate how a cloth would behave and flow back. But the bugs would get agitated. They might fly off and come back and settle back in with a little bit of a lag. So working out that relationship of physics to performance was an interesting challenge. Getting all of that to work together has been an interesting blend of creative challenges, getting the performances to read right, and of technical challenges of getting all of these components to actually work together.
So we're out there at this gas station at night, and we start out, and we've got the guy in the Vermin Man suit.
Ready?
Yes.
But that really is only for reference.
It's actually a lot of fun. It's the only challenge is just kind of staying oriented when I'm in this thing, because I can basically just see through a pinhole. But aside from that, it's fun. It's kind of cool, you know?
Doing all right? Everything good?
Well, good.
Okay, I think you're done.
All right, thanks.
One of the great things about having somebody actually go through the performance with Keanu is Keanu got a sense for eye line and choreography.
Action! Go.
And it also gave us a reference for what that would look like, because we would shoot even those test passes on film. And then we would always do a version with the Vermin Man suit guy, and then we would take him out and Keanu would actually mime the same performance.
It was just Keanu doing the whole thing by himself, fighting with the air. When our animators got to it and blocked in a CG character fighting with Keanu up against nothing, he did some really cool things.
Action!
Keanu Reeves is actually responding with real sense of weight and resistance in the performance. And in that regard, you know, Keanu was sort of directing what Vermin Man was going to be doing at any particular moment.
And then, of course, we finished the 9 or 10 enough. Wasn't big enough.
When you would see it in the cut, it just kind of laid there. It was just, you know, it had such great possibilities, and it was just so pared down to just be able to do it that it just fell flat.
We're out here trying to add to the Vermin Man scene. Seeing how he came together, I sort of saw more opportunities that, you know, to play with him.
So now there's additional 13 visual effects shots, kind of opened up the scale, a little bit more dramatic. Keanu is going to fight the Vermin Man into the street, so we're getting ready to shoot some kind of like in the street type shots.
Just missing him. That's our first CG car.
We have some challenges because as Keanu runs out into the traffic, we obviously can't risk Keanu's life, and we want the traffic to look like it's moving quickly. So we're building CG cars which will drive by Keanu in between his dodges, so that he looks like he's in jeopardy when he's not.
It would be nice if there's one CG car that's like, move, just misses him, and he starts to go down, and maybe there's one that's already there, which... The diver one, the one that is our second CG car. Yeah.
The original sequence was a little too easy for Constantine to get through, so I wanted to make it a bigger moment. It's a big sort of action sequence in the first third of the movie, and I wanted Constantine to work a little harder. I wanted him to be a little smarter, and I also wanted to get a little bit more out of the character that we created of Vermin Man.
Oh, Keanu, that was great.
We're actually shooting a lot of the close-ups, a lot of pretty wild shots, some pretty interesting 360 camera moves. That'll be kind of tricky, and it's kind of a cat and mouse chase at this point. So the Vermin Man will form and then kind of disappear and then reform. Over here, he's there, he's over there. So it's going to be pretty interesting.
I played this all night.
Your first time through, you have to be spot on every day for 90 days, and then you've got your footage and you have to cut your film. You sit down and you have the, wow, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. And we luckily have the opportunity to come back and, I got to put a little list together of things that I wanted to change, things I wasn't happy with, extra things that I wanted to do, and the studio was great enough to let us come back and do that. And so I think it's a fantastic luxury, actually, to be able to sit back, cut the film, see what you need, and be able to pick that stuff up. I'm very excited. I'm especially happy now that we get to sort of polish it up.
Rachel has to be pulled all the way through this building, one room at a time. So we built all of the rooms, with the exception of the room full of cubicles, which was built as a miniature only. We built the conference room, of course, as a full-scale set. We built the hallway as a full-scale hallway. Then working with the art department and with Alan Hall, I had them build breakaway sections of those that would automatically blast out on cue. And then we shot all those as background plates. We shot Rachel on a green screen to put into that. And then we added on top a great deal of CG debris and papers and staplers.
48 frames a second. Action. Would you want to change anything, or let's just safety and do it?
You want to add some more sparks? I think they went off before you actually saw them.
I don't really bother reading the action bits because I read the dialogue and the psychological stuff. And I obviously skipped through quite a few pages.
Number one position, please, guys. Here we go.
Are we going all the way up? I should probably throw out my chewing gum at some point.
Chewing gum?
Is this a real thing or a half?
No, it's a real thing.
Okay.
Because they might be preparing for whatever their character's doing or whatever else is going on in their life at this moment. But my concern with them not only is their performance level, but is their safety generally.
R.A. would be a great cult leader. He could get you to do anything. I promise you, he just looks you in the eyes, and he just has this way, and he'll just say, I just want you to jump off that cliff, and it will be fine. And you go, oh, okay. Like as wild and stuff here.
Like you're just a ragdoll.
Well, I am just a ragdoll.
She accuses me of hypnotizing her is what it is, and it's really not that, but I try to be very calm with her and with all of them, but also make eye contact. I'm not trying to avoid telling them the truth.
You might just sit down for a second.
Absolutely.
Can I?
All right, well done.
There was a time when I thought, I don't think I can do it. He just took me aside and he just said, you can do it. And I was like, oh, I can do it, yeah. He's very persuasive, Ari.
Doing the split.
Oh, okay, they should stay in the same vicinity.
Stay, not as extreme in the kicks.
Okay.
Okay?
When they come in to work with us and we've done our job and they're doing their job, the idea is it's strictly acting now. It's not about survival, it's not about being scared. It's all about acting.
It's fun, it's fun.
So that's it. Well, I don't know. I think and then
we'll have that shot yesterday.
What we did yesterday, you get sucked through those doors.
Yeah.
And this shot is a shot of a series of office cubicles that are being blown aside as she's being pulled through the building. We couldn't really do it full scale because this would be a very large set, so miniature was a natural decision.
What we're using on this set here is a motion control system. We have the cart that goes underneath the set that has the doll that represents the actress in the movie as she's getting pulled through the set.
There were, I think, about 80 cues on the way through for all the walls to be pulled apart. They're all pulled apart on wires. All these air mortars are blowing stuff in the air. Things are all flying around. And the camera drops as all the walls of the cubicles blow out. And just at the end, you see this little figure fly under camera, which is Rachel. So we had to build a little maquette, a little model of Rachel, which you see behind me.
Action!
Oh, and look, it was great how it just went over her head.
Another successful shoot.
We didn't have to build that office out of CG. We didn't have to sit there and animate papers flying through the air for that shot. we really could get the shot essentially entirely in camera, see dailies the next day, know we had the shot, just do a little cleanup and go away. And this was a perfect application of that. And then the final last shot, the camera's pulling Keanu through, and you wind up with Keanu stopping at the window, and the camera continues to pull back as if it's Rachel's POV. And you see.
But so are we. And that's why we go to the movies, to find some kind of map so we can find our own destinies as well.
Sometimes by the time we were pre-visiting, we might even have locations or location ideas and things like that. So they would scan in location photos, or they'd have really elaborate versions of backgrounds built. I mean, down to the lens, the camera height, everything figured out to exactly how large locations and spaces are. A lot of that was we were really trying to get, you know, the correct pace for people walking or running, because it's really tough to try and pace out a scene and figure out what shots you need, and if you're not getting movements correct. And if you look at sequences in the movie that were previs, they're almost exact. Now, speaking of almost exact, this is actually probably the most different of any of the sequences that were prevised. This one was the one that I stuck the least close to. See, in previs, we went around on her face there, and I decided to keep her face hidden, keep it in shadow. And I sort of withheld holding her face for a while. But I also got a little more complex later in the scene in the way I shot it and the way I covered it than I did in the original previs, and had a lot more angles. And although some of the ideas you can see sort of match here and did help, but it actually got us into a little bit of trouble in editorial, because it was all sort of budgeted for a certain amount of effect shots according to the previs, and then the way that I shot it added, I think 15 or 20 more effect shots, which became problematic, and we had to kind of fight and battle for those things to get them finished. One of the things, too, that we did with the scene was that we originally were going to try and shoot this on location. We ended up building a set. So out that window is sometimes green screen, sometimes a blown-out piece of muslin. So these shots that we didn't even think would have to be effect shots ended up being effect shots. You can sort of see here now, this is where it gets a little different. And what I shot actually seems to cut around a lot more than prevised. But it's pretty close. Some of it's pretty close. This was a tough one to sort of figure out the physics of how this mirror was going to pull out of the building and fly through the sky, and how that whole sort of pulley system that John said that was going to work. This, for some reason, was one of my favorite previs. In this, I actually did shoot almost exactly. It's now sort of a cut-down version of it that exists in the film, but I did shoot sort of shot for shot how it feels here, and I always thought it was really effective. There's an old version of this as well, before we had her falling into a pool, where she used to hit the mezzanine above the lobby, and we used to sort of follow her body down. But we kept traveling, and we'd see these two guys smoking a cigarette, having not been aware that this girl just jumped to her death right up above them. But then we decided to tie in the pool of water, which was a really good story point. Pupils dilate, and she pops up. You think it's a dream. We had these great previs guys and girls actually, but this one guy, Rich Lee, who just was fantastic, and he was kind of the supervisor on the whole thing and was really the genius behind all of these things. And this was when we were originally going to shoot the scene on Broadway, just around 8th Street, but we ended up shooting on 8th near Broadway. And it was a different theater, which is why it looks a little bit different. We sort of set this Mexican church up in. But this stuff was all very accurate. You can see the effect shots were all pretty much exactly the same. simplified my shooting a little bit here. The bus doesn't pass by until the end of the dialogue scene. This is pretty close too, but we simplified the shooting of this one a little bit as well. Cut down on some of the effect shots, keep it a little more frenetic and frantic. Following him around as he tries to drink. Yeah, there was a while too where we were thinking that sort of get the idea across here, we were going to have to tell the story from different points of view. Whenever we were with Hennessy, nothing would be coming out, but you would sort of see it from a point of view of the liquor store clerk. And when you saw it then, you would see this liquid sort of pouring into Hennessy's mouth. And what ended up happening, it became actually more confusing than it did before. So we just simplified it and kept it with Hennessy's point of view, and nothing's coming out until the end, and you see it sort of pouring out of his mouth. This one I did shot for shot, actually. Although I think in the final sequence we actually cut it down, but I did definitely shoot this one shot for shot. Seemed sort of tricky and ended up being the simplest of the sort of effect sequences to shoot. In part because we prevised it, and so everything was built exactly how we needed it. And we shot it exactly how we needed it, just little piece by little piece. And we shot this whole thing in about a day and a half or something. It was really pretty easy. The set was just kind of ready to go. Just grabbing all these little pieces. Except for this shot. This shot actually took a couple of days to shoot, just for all the layering of the different people. This was kind of a fun little bit here, trying to connect Constantine and Isabel. Even though they're in different places, it was just using screen direction and editing to sort of feel this connection. It feels like they're in the same place, but really she's on, the rooftop reenacting her suicide, and he's down on the freeway. So it was kind of fun, and you could obviously see if this kind of stuff was going to work by prevising it all. And it really helped us out with our budget as well, because we knew, the exact stuff we had to build and the exact stuff we had to shoot. So it was very simple to figure it all out, create all the pieces that we needed. It was especially helpful for this sequence, actually, because we actually boiled it down to, okay, this one piece is a miniature, this piece we need hydraulic to pull her through the doors. We just had to build the absolute minimum, which sort of allowed us to afford to do that sequence. And if you couldn't previs, you'd have to build a whole lot more than you actually needed, and a lot of time and money would be wasted that, you could put on the screen somewhere else. So one of the great things about doing previs was, I was working with Rich Lee, the previs supervisor, but also I had my storyboard artist, this guy, Jay Martin, who I'd worked with on a bunch of the music videos I'd done before, and they actually became really good friends. And so I would work with Jay on these scenes first, and we would sort of do a little thumbnail ahead of time, and then we would hand those things over to Rich as a sort of a map for him, and he would turn them into animations, and they worked really well together. This was kind of a fun. I remember getting these previs. This obviously, the into the light sort of effect evolved and changed, but I really liked this. And I remember having a piece of music on here that I really, really liked. And it was, you could actually start to sort of get the mood of the film here, which I really enjoyed, that we used to have. We would have these presentations for the studio, and we had this whole hallway filled with all our visual references and storyboards and set drawings and location pictures, and we had these little computers set up all in the hallways, next to everything, and it would be playing the previs of the specific sequences, and the music would be playing, and it was pretty cool. This Gabriel's Death, Cancer Cure, and the Gabriel Blast really just sort of helped set up how the movie was going to feel with music and sound. And I remember Rich, the previous supervisor and I used to spend hours and hours and hours putting sound effects to these things and music to these things, and beyond just setting up the shots and Rich doing the lighting and creating the models and setting up the animation and all that. And it was really helpful for everybody. It was such a great tool to sort of see how the whole thing was going to feel. Obviously, some things like screen direction change, you know, on the day. Obviously, things change a lot, too, when it comes down to, you know, creating performances and seeing how things actually get set up, you know, dynamics between actors and things. But for the real effect sequences, you know, for the most part, you could be pretty accurate. See things like that change, you know, on the day. Instead of lying down on the ground, you have John, which I actually like better, sort of slumped up against the doors, you know. So it's all a little different. Deciding that Satan's going to sit down in front of him, and so you see the little chair get plopped down in front of his face. And missing little cool elements that you come up with on the day. Like one of my favorite shots in the whole movie is there where Satan's about to take him away, and John puts a cigarette out in his own blood. That's pretty hardcore. So obviously we couldn't previs those things. We hadn't come up with them yet. Like this, John going up to heaven. Having previs really helped us figure out how to do things too. We know that we did that shot completely separately. We had a motion control crane, and John was laid out on this sort of 20-foot by 20-foot piece of the tile floor that matched our set, and it was hinged. And so John was on a rig, Keanu was on a rig, and as the camera came down and went below him, the floor would actually drop out, and John would start to get lifted up by the wire rig. It was pretty elaborate, you know, and having previs it is really the only way you could do it. And, you know, Mike Fink, the vis effects supervisor, would actually have the previs guys show him on the computer, you know, the crane we needed, the camera we needed, so you could have the exact specifications of every single element needed to do it. And this was kind of a nice sequence as well. That's no longer in the movie, and we never finished the effects, but this great sequence toward the end where Satan is releasing Angela's sister Isabel into heaven, and we used to cut to the girls, the twins, when they're girls, on these swings in this sort of surreal landscape. It was kind of this endless green grass and fairy tale sky, and Angela watches as her sister sort of lets go of the swings, pushes off, but keeps going up as the swing falls back. And we shot it and decided it was corny. But it was a nice try. This was an ending that we shot but never used on the rooftop. It was just like a little cliche to have this popcorn ending for this movie. But it was this idea that Angela, using her power now, sort of helps John out at the very end, and John's actually up there on the rooftop and using Angela as bait to get this sort of last remaining demon to fly up there so he can shoot it. Here's another alternate Chaz version of an ending where Gabriel's left in the pool of water at the end of the film, and Chaz is dead, and he comes back through the wall as a half-breed to confront Gabriel. We're going to pan across the room, and the wall was going to open up, turning into heaven, Los Angeles, and Chaz comes back. But we canned that scene, too.
This is Frank Capello, one of the writers on Constantine, and this was a little animatic kind of tone poem I had done while I was writing. I tend to think in images, and so I have done some special effects in my past. And some of these images were in my original version of the script, the twins, Angela and Isabel swinging. This was how Angela was first revealed in the subway. With the train coming, she had chased a bad guy in there. Just an image of John and his cigarettes and just being followed, you know, by very scary things. I had midnight chanting with the skull, trying to bring out what was really coming to LA, and of course, Isabel on the rooftop. There were just images that I wanted to put together to make it all come together in my mind, what the mood of the picture was. It wasn't some high, fast-paced, action-cutting film. It was something that was more provocative. Just the images, just the feeling, just the slowness of it, actually. And I think in the final version, they got that tone exactly right. And of course, John shooting the bird at the end, which is pretty much of a classic moment, even in the comics.